So this is the tutorial on how to make my refried beans recipe. I use an Instant Pot for this. Normally when you make refried beans, you're looking at hours and hours and hours of cooking. You've got to soak the beans. You have to do 100 things, it seems like, just to be able to get your beans ready to cook, and then you have to cook them for 10 hours. In the Instant Pot, we are looking at a total cook time of 50 minutes. That's about 5 to 10 minutes for doing your sauteing and getting everything ready in your pot, getting it nice and warmed up, and then 40 minutes of pressurized cook time. So in this video, what you're going to see is the ingredients, putting everything into the pot, and sealing it up. So it'll probably take us about 10 minutes to do that. Um, I have not quite figured out how to pause and re-record, so we're going to do it all in one step. Feel free to jump on ahead if you need to, because I'll probably be making small talk here and there. So I'm going to grab the computer so that I can show you the ingredients. They're easy, and you will see the full recipe on my blog, which is blogger.laneranch.com. Alrighty, so first of all, you're going to see there's my Instant Pot all ready to go. And we're going to turn it on to the saute feature, because over here you'll see we have a 1/4 pound of bacon, onions, chicken stock, pinto beans, salt and pepper, cumin, and 2 cups of water. The reason for the 2 cups of water is because I use my own stock that I make, surprise, in the Instant Pot. So, oops, let me move over here. Sorry. Um, I make the stock in the Instant Pot, and then I put it into 2 cups a piece of stock in 2 different containers. I use either mason jars or Pyrex Tupperware, kind of, or even I have just glass jars like this. And so I will be doing a tutorial on my bone chicken broth as well, but that's what we're doing. And because it's a stock, it's super, super concentrated. And so I'm gonna add a little water to it rather than using all stock. Otherwise it's gonna have the beans will have a real chickeny flavor. So while the Instant Pot is warming up, I'm just gonna situate you here like this so that you can see what's going on here, okay? So obviously I've already peeled my onion and gotten that ready, so I'm just gonna actually set that off to the side. What I have here is bacon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of thick cut, and this is cherry wood, not applewood. I really like cherry wood bacon. I love applewood bacon as well. This is only halfway defrosted. It makes it a little bit easier to cut the bacon up. If it's fully defrosted, bacon gets kind of sad and floppy, and it's a little hard to cut up. So I like to leave it a little bit frozen. I keep all the pieces together. I do a quick cut in half, and then I just start chopping the bacon into nice small pieces here. So this is about the size that you're looking for. I'd say that's about maybe a 1/2 inch strip. And you just kind of take the whole block. Your Instant Pot's already going on saute, and you throw it in there. You can hear it sizzling away. You want to get that all cooking. So just cut up all of your bacon. I like to make my own refried beans this way rather than buying refried beans from the store, because of 2 reasons really. A, we go through a lot of refried beans. I can make this entire recipe with my own homemade stock for $5. That's really not that bad. The bacon costs $6 for a whole pound of it, and I split it between 3 different recipes. So we're using an onion, bacon, my homemade stock, cumin, salt, and pepper. Can't get any cheaper. The other reason that I really like it is because I don't like to use aluminum cans very much if I don't have to. Sure, they store food for a long time, but they're storing food in aluminum. Also, you're looking at a lot of different preservatives. Sometimes there's like corn syrup in canned foods that you buy from the store. And ever since having my daughter, before that really, but this has become a big thing of mine since having my daughter, I want to know what I'm putting into her food. She's 14 months old. I want to know what's going into her body. My husband and I are getting older. We don't really care so much about us, but we certainly care about what's going into her body. It also saves us a lot of money. We are on quite a budget, and I don't want to be out there spending $1.50 a can when I could make the equivalent of 10 cans for $5. It just seems to make more sense to me. So I've almost got all the bacon cut up. I'm sure you can hear it sizzling, and I'm sure you can imagine it smells delicious. Now, a lot of recipes don't call for actually putting bacon in the refried beans. I like it for two reasons. It adds a really good fat, and it adds some amazing flavor. So, now you've got your refried beans, or refried bean bacon all cut up. It's all in the pot. I'm going to rinse my hands. What I've got here is a regular old wooden spoon. Now, I am not closing the Instant Pot up all the way, the lid. I am just closing it so that you can still hear me, because that sizzling bacon is awfully loud. Now, a whole onion may seem like a bit of overkill here, but man, is it good to have a whole onion in there, let me tell you. So, you're just going to quickly, while that bacon is cooking up and you're rendering the fat on the bacon, we're just going to slice up this onion real quick. Because it's going in there with the bacon on saute in your Instant Pot. So we got the 1/2. I used a smaller cutting board. I'm going to have to open this back up. You're going to hear lots of sizzle, yummy, delicious. You're probably not going to cook all of the bacon all the way through. That's okay, because it's going to cook when you're cooking for 40 minutes with the beans. As you're cooking those all along, we're just going to get these onions in here as well, so we can cut the other half. But as I was saying, you're not really going to worry about the fact that maybe your bacon isn't entirely cooked through. Just do the best that you can. And I'm just closing that up so that you can still hear me. And again, I'm just slicing the other half of the onion. And this is all real time because I wanted to use my computer to make this rather than use the iPad or the phone, so that I could set everything aside and not have to hold on to anything. They're hard to prop up. We're just going to get these onions in there, throw a little at you. It's a little quieter now. Maybe we could leave that open for a second while these onions get working too. Oopsie. We're going to give that a quick stir. That fat is rendering well. I'm going to lift you up in just a second, let you see what it looks like in here. Okay, you can see into the Instant Pot. That bacon is starting to render, the fat on it's rendering nicely, and the onions are starting to soften. That's what we want to keep doing. Just soften those onions right up. Makes for a really nice, yummy, delicious base for our refried beans. I'm just going to give it a few more stirs here. You'll notice when you turn the Instant Pot on saute, it says 30 minutes. I don't adjust the time on that at all, because roughly Or rarely do you ever saute for the full 30 minutes, but it is nice to have that time. You can always turn it back on if it turns off, but you're not bringing to pressure on saute or anything. It's just get everything nice and cooked. Getting a good start on your food. So at this point, I've got my good old refried beans. Here we're looking at a pound of refried beans, just Safeway brand. It always calls for washing your beans. All of the recipes always do. And I don't like doing dishes, so I prefer, hence the Instant Pot, all in one pot. I prefer, instead of getting a colander out and having to rinse everything, I take my knife and I poke a few small holes towards the bottom of the bag. Then I take my kitchen scissors, cut off the top of the bag real quick, and I've got about 6 or 8 holes just punched in the bottom. You want to make sure not to make those holes too big or your beans will start to escape. Then I just take it over to my sink, fill the bag with water, set it up against the side of the sink while it drains, and I do that a couple of times to make sure that I get the beans nice and clean. Now, when you do that, you want to give the beans a couple of shakes in there in the water. Make sure you're getting them nice and shaking around to make sure you're getting all the dirt out of there and everything. Usually they come from the store fairly clean, but it is a really good idea to just clean them off one more time. You never know. So, at this point, my onions are getting nice and soft and delicious. My bacon is, the fat on it is rendering nicely. Now, if you don't know what word I'm using when I'm saying the fat is rendering, that is when the fat starts to get kind of translucent instead of that gross kind of chunky white. You want that to happen because you want to break everything down and get it nice and good and cooked. That way too, when you go to eat your beans later, you're not just getting a bite of cooked but kind of grizzly fat. This is kind of breaking it all down and making it all nice. It can give you a little look to see again. There you go. So, just so you can see in there, I think you're getting fogged up there, but you can see that the bacon is rendering nicely. Turn that back out one more second, okay? And I'll even pick out a piece of bacon for you to see here, so you can kind of see what we're looking for. Now that I've added the onions, they're giving off a little bit of water, which is also kind of accumulating in the bottom of the pot. But if you can see here, you're looking for kind of floppy, translucent fat bacon. The meat's starting to get kind of cooked on it. We're not looking for the same type of bacon, nice and crispy and delicious, that you're going to eat. We're looking for the kind that you want in a recipe to just give off that fat and flavor. That's also why I don't use like a whole pound of bacon or anything like that. These aren't refried bacon beans. These are just refried beans. You can use lard if you would prefer. If you're going to use lard, I would use probably 1 tablespoon of lard. That's going to do the same thing for you. It's going to give a nice pork fat for you, and it's going to give you a good flavor as well. I just like to use the bacon because we love bacon in this house. Okay, so I have, at this point, cut up 5-6 pieces of bacon in half-inch strips, just little half-inch strips, a whole onion, and gotten it all in there. And I am ready at this point to add my liquids and my seasoning and my beans. I leave it the whole time on the saute feature while I add all of this, and this is the reason why. When you have cold items in your Instant Pot and you go to seal it up and turn it on, and you look at a recipe and it says 40 minutes of cook time, you're probably not just looking at 40 minutes of cook time, because everything you've put into your pot is cold. So it's going to take a while to heat up inside the pot, create the steam, which creates the pressure. And so sometimes you can be looking at 20 minutes of pressure time depending on the temperature of the items that you've put into your pot. So as I add my liquids and all of my ingredients, I either keep it on the saute feature or on the low feature. And that way I'm heating everything up as I'm working, which gives me a shorter come to pressure time, which is really great, because then when you turn it on, instead of it meaning 40 minutes cook time, it's actually an hour because you're doing 20 minutes of warm-up time. I'm looking at more 45 minutes total of cook time because it only takes about 5 minutes to come up to pressure. So what I have here are my cleaned beans. I'm just going to set those here on a towel real quick, and I'm going to start adding my liquids. So like I said, I have my chicken bone broth, which I've made from scratch and I keep in my freezer. I'm going to start getting those added. And I'm leaving it on the saute feature. So I dumped that, and that was about 1.5, 2 cups there. We're going for a total of 8 cups of liquid. So here I have, and you can see it's still a little bit frozen. So when we dump this in here, the nice thing about having it be on the saute feature is that it's gonna warm this all up for me. So I still have a nice layer of chicken fat on the top of here. So another fat that I'm adding. Should you want to make refried beans vegetarian, more power to you. That is delicious as well, and you're not getting all these animal fats. I would use olive oil as your base fat to cook up those onions, and then I would also use vegetable broth instead of chicken broth or chicken stock like I have here. This is my chicken stock, and when I make my chicken stock, come back for that tutorial because that's pretty great too. I use a whole chicken in the Instant Pot. Make a dinner with chicken, onions, carrots, celery, and a bunch of different vegetables all in my Instant Pot for dinner that night. I put liquid in with that, cook it all down, take the chicken out, make dinner for that night, pull off all the chicken, then I put the bones back into the pot and cook it for another hour to get all of the marrow out to make that delicious bone broth. And you're getting a couple of meals out of it. You'll have all of your chicken broth and you had a dinner that night. So you're not just working hard to make a broth that, maybe you're not even going to use that night and you're just putting away in the freezer. So same thing with my refried beans. The first night that I make it, we have bean burritos for dinner. I take the refried beans out, I fry them up in a pan with some butter and add a bunch of mozzarella cheese or Monterey Jack cheese, whichever you prefer. Mix it all in together, and then we serve that up on tortillas with some extra cheese and sour cream. Delicious. Just putting this in the sink. So I've now added in my stock, which, like I said, chicken broth is totally fine, the store-bought. If you buy one of those cartons of stock, you can use the one carton and then just refill it with water. If you use stock, you're going to want to use 2 of those. I'm sorry, if you use broth instead of stock. Let me say that again. If you're using stock, you don't need it to be super chickeny flavorful, so you can just use 1 box of stock, refill that with water, and dump it in again so you have enough liquid for your beans. If you're using chicken broth, you're going to use 2 of those cartons of chicken broth. So I'm getting that in there. My stock was a little bit frozen, so I'm just letting that warm up there. And I'm adding in just 2 cups of water as well. So now we have a total of 8 cups of liquid. And while that is all coming to temperature, getting nice and warm and delicious, I'm just going to rinse my hands real quick here. And we are going to add our seasonings, which I need measuring spoons for. Just going to give you a quick look here how everything's looking. That is with the bacon, the onions, the chicken stock, which you can see a little block of frozen there, so I still have it on saute to kind of get that all going. Get it nice and warmed up so my come to pressure time is less. And now we are going to add ground cumin, black pepper, and I like to use kosher salt. I keep coarse around the house because I use it for a lot of different recipes. It's just easier that way. So we are going to use a teaspoon of cumin. Just go ahead and shake that out into your teaspoon. It can be a rounded teaspoon. It doesn't have to be totally exact, but you really want that nice smoky cumin flavor in your beans. Now, normally in the past, I would have used jalapenos or green chilies in this recipe as well. Because I have a 14-month-old, she doesn't want her mouth on fire, so I don't add those while I'm making this recipe. I make it a little on the mild side because you can always doctor it up later, and depending on what refried beans you're using, for what, whatever recipe you're using them in, you can add some heat to it, some spice to it a little bit later. So these are not bland, but they're a little more on the blander side. I also don't use a lot of salt for the same reason. She's 14 months old. She doesn't need a lot of salt in her diet. We don't really either, and we can always add salt to our food later, but she can't take it out. So for this entire thing, for 8 cups of water, I use half a teaspoon of kosher salt. That's it. They're not very salty. You can definitely add salt later if you need to, and you can increase the amount of salt that you use if you want, but I just like to use a smaller amount. Like I said, I'm feeding a little. As far as pepper goes, that is totally to taste. I am not a huge pepper lover. My husband is. So I am actually just going to open up the little shaker part of this, and I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 shakes. That's it. He'd probably prefer I use a whole teaspoon. But like I said, I'm not a huge pepper lover, so I put it in there just to flavor it, give it a little bit of that peppery taste, and that's it. So at this point, my little chicken stock ice cube is almost completely broken up. I'm just gonna give that one little break up, and I'll give you a little look-see. There you have it. That's what it looks like. Now we're just gonna add the beans really quick. Like I said, full bag, get it in there, and then I just give it a little mix up. And that's it. If it seems a little liquidy, that's actually a good thing because those beans are going to need to absorb a lot of that liquid. So, as you can see here, I've got my Instant Pot lid on. I've got it in the sealed position. I'm just going to hit the off button because we're no longer using the saute feature. I'm going to lock it closed, manual for 40 minutes. Get it up to 40, and that is it, my friends. That is all you do. When the timer goes off for 40 minutes, sometimes depending on how old the beans are, they can take a little bit longer to get to the right consistency. So 40 minutes is my jumping off point. Know that once you get to that 40-minute mark, you may have to turn it on for a little bit longer to get those beans a little bit softer. I made this recipe a few weeks ago and 40 minutes was perfect. The first time I made the recipe, I got to the 40-minute mark and they needed an extra 5 minutes. It didn't take long to get it back up to pressure to make it up to that 5 minutes and just get it just a little of that bite gone. But you know, they're refried beans. I mash half of them once this is finished, and then I leave half of them unmashed. I kind of like the whole bean in there. You can mash them all. You can do it however you want. You can use a stick blender and mash them up, or you can just use a potato masher, which is what I use, and they're pretty amazing. Now, recall you're going to have about 6 cups of beans, 6 to 8 cups, depending on how much liquid is left over. And so what I do is I use mason jars and I fill them to the freeze line and then stick them in the freezer. And anytime we want refried beans, I take them out, take that metal lid off, just put them in the microwave just for a minute to defrost it enough that I can get them out. And then I just throw them in a pan and heat them up really quick. And that's it. They are delicious. And it's a quick, easy way to add refried beans to any of your Mexican meals. Thank you so much for joining me on this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Also, just head over to my blog. It'll be linked on here to get the full recipe so you don't have to watch it over and over and over again to remember how to make it. Have a great day.